kunja vihari. Gopijana vallabha girivaradhari. Gopijana vallabha girivaradhari. Yashodanandana vrajanaranjana. Yashodanandana vrajanaranjana. Yamunatiravanachari. Yamunatiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana vrajanaranjana. Yamunatiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajākācārya Ashtottara Satashishimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Samsthapakacharya, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam ततो जायमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके bhaktir-bhavati naishtikhi. So this morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, in the matter of answers by citing the Lord's version, text 40. Prajā-patir, dharma-patir, ekadā, niyamān, yamān, bhadraṁ, prajānām, anvicchan, ātiṣṭhat, svārtha-kāmyayā. Prajā-patir, dharma-patir, ekadā, niyamān, yamān, bhadraṁ, prajānām, anvicchan, ātiṣṭhat, svārtha-kāmyayā. Prajā-patir, dharma-patir, ekadā, niyamān, yamān, bhadraṁ, prajānām, anvicchan, ātiṣṭhat, svārtha-kāmyayā. Prajā-patir, dharma-patir, ekadā, niyamān, yamān, bhadraṁ, prajānām, anvicchan, ātiṣṭhat, svārtha-kāmyayā. Prajā-patir, dharma-patir, ekadā, niyamān, yamān, prajānām, anvicchan, ātiṣṭhat, svārtha-kāmyayā. Hare Krishna. Dharma-patir, prajānām, anvicchan, ātiṣṭhat, svārtha-kāmyayā. Prajā-patir, dharma-patir, bhadraṁ, prajānām, anvicchan, svārtha-kāmyayā. Vaishnavis. Prajā-patir, dharma-patir, ekadā, niyamān, yamān, bhadraṁ, prajānām, anvicchan, ātiṣṭhat, svārtha-kāmyayā. Prajā-patir, dharma-patir, ekadā, niyamān, yamān, bhadraṁ, prajānām, anvicchan, ātiṣṭhat, svārtha-kāmyayā. Prajāpatir, the forefather of all living entities. Dharma-patir, the father of religious life. Ekadā, once upon a time. Niyamān, rules and regulations. Yamān, principles of control, bhadram, welfare, prajānām, of the living beings, anvicchan, desiring, ātiṣṭhat, situated, sva-artha, own interest, kāmyayā, so desiring. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Thus, once upon a time, the forefather of living entities and the father of religiousness, Lord Brahmā, situated himself in acts of regulative principles, desiring self-interest for the welfare of all living entities. Purport. One cannot be situated in an exalted position without having undertaken a regulative life of rules and regulations. An unrestricted life of sense gratification is animal life, and Lord Brahmā, in order to teach all concerned within the jurisdiction of his generations, taught the same principles of sense control for executing higher duties. He desired the welfare of all as servants of God, and anyone desiring the welfare of the members of his family and generations must conduct a moral, religious life. The highest life of moral principles is to become a devotee of the Lord, because a pure devotee of the Lord has all the good qualities of the Lord. On the other hand, one who is not a devotee of the Lord, however qualified he may be in the mundane sense of the term, cannot be qualified with any good quality worthy of the name. The pure devotees of the Lord, like Brahmā and persons in the chain of disciplic succession, do not do anything to instruct their subordinates without acting accordingly themselves. Om ajnānatimirandasya jnānjana shlakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Caitanya manobishtam sthapitam yena bhutale swayam rupa kadamahyam dadati svapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Caitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Jayapataka Swaminiti Namine Nama Acharya Padaya Natakripa Pradayine Gaurakatha Dhamadaya Nagragramatharine Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Gopi Paranadana Saiti Namine Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yatkripatamaham bande Shri Gurudantharinam yatkripatamaham bande Paramananda Madhavam Shri Caitanya Ishwaram. Katanchana smrite yasmin dushkaram zakaram bhavet vismrite viparitam syat Shri Caitanyam namamitam. So, in this purport, Prabhupada stresses on regulative life of rules and regulations, without which he explains that one cannot be situated in a exalted position. So then we may wonder what happened to the slogan called higher taste. It's the most spoken about in our Krishna consciousness movement, especially when we are preaching to newcomers. So is it merely a preaching strategy that we use to induct newcomers? Is this our induction strategy, recruitment strategy, or is this for real? Is it that when we recruit people into the Krishna consciousness movement, then they begin to understand, oh, it's all about rules and regulations? No. There is a whole science behind these rules and regulations. There's a whole science behind it. When Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains that before we come to the stage of Shraddha we generally think, yes, it's faith. It is faith. But he outlines there are two levels before that. The first level is Satam Kripa, which means the mercy of exalted devotees. Then Mahat Seva, service to those devotees. Then he speaks about Shraddha. So, when by good fortune we come into contact with devotees, we get the mercy of the Lord. The mercy of the Lord is transmitted through the kindness of the devotees. And by rendering service to them, one develops this concept of, develops the faith in the process of Krishna consciousness. Then it speaks about following the rules and regulations, sadhu sangha, and then accepting initiation, and then, so that's bhajana kriya. So, before we come to the stage of rules and regulations, there are stages of receiving the mercy of the devotees, serving the devotees, and developing Shraddha. So the first stages involve higher taste. So does it mean that, okay, the first stages involve higher taste, so the next stage is, okay, forget about that now, it's just an entry strategy, it's a whole different world? No. The idea is that the higher taste is meant to expand and become consistent. So we all experience higher taste, due to which we have come to Krishna consciousness. And this higher taste is meant to expand and it is meant to become consistent. Then we may think, is it really like that? Then if devotees have experienced higher taste, why is it that devotees have difficulty controlling the senses, or why do devotees fall down? Because logically it doesn't make sense, right? Because if we have experienced something higher, why would anyone choose something lower? Why would somebody choose something lower? So logically, how is all this consistent? So, yes, we experience higher taste. However, because we have been in this material world since Anadi, time immemorial, we have a spontaneous taste for sense gratification. So there's a difference between higher taste and spontaneous taste. So what we are accustomed to is the spontaneous taste for sense gratification. And not only is it spontaneous, you really don't have to work a lot for sense gratification. I mean, of course, depends on the extent that you want, you have to work hard, but in general, it is immediate and easily available. Whereas, Yes, in the beginning we may think when we come into contact with devotees, serve the devotees, come into contact with the Krishna conscious movement, everything appears spontaneous and immediate. Because it is new for the mind. Mind, anything that you present new to the mind is attracted. It's attracted. So therefore we see that today there is a lot of talk about scrolling the mobile phone, for different videos and all these different things. The addiction of scrolling. So where is that coming from? Because the mind is looking for newer and newer and newer. So there is some certain sense of attraction in anything that is new. So that includes when we take to Krishna consciousness, there is a certain attraction. Apart from the attraction of the mind, it's also a higher taste. So there are things happening on multiple levels. There is higher taste. There is also attraction of the mind. But the attraction of the mind is going to go away. The moment it knows, okay, this is what it is, it's going to go away. So the mind is going to go into something else. So the point is that we have to make the higher taste spontaneous and consistent. So the rules and regulations that are there are simply meant to enable the higher taste to become spontaneous and consistent. We have to work to make it spontaneous and consistent. Therefore, there are rules and regulations. And Prabhupada earlier in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada explains very nicely that the secret of seeing Krishna in every page of the Srimad Bhagavatam is by rapt attention of hearing the Bhagavatam. And then he says this rapt attention can only be attained, one can be rapt, one can hear the Bhagavatam with rapt attention only when one is pure in mind. And then he says that one can be pure in mind only when one is pure in action. And then he says one can be pure in action only when one is pure in the habits of eating, sleeping, mating and defending. So these rules and regulations are not just some moral principles. They are moral principles definitely, but they are also scientific principles of cognition. Cognition means perception of an object. Okay, for example, now I have this counter. We may think, what is the perception? Okay, see, look at it with the eyes and that's it. So this is the method to perceive this object. But there are different ways to perceive different objects. Even material world, forget about spiritual world. Even the material world, of course, there is this whole discussion about moon landing. So there is, I already brought this up in an earlier class. So there is this whole discussion about was it the moon, was it not the moon, and so many different things, So what is for sure? That the moon which is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam and in our Vedic scriptures, that is the moon, that is definitely not the moon to which the moon landings have had access. But have they had any access to the moon at all? Prabhupada, once in a conversation, he brought up the point, just like if someone lands in the Thar desert of Rajasthan in India or in the Arizona desert of America, this is not the whole of America, this is not the whole of India, this is not the whole of the world either. So it's like you go to the reception of a building and you have no idea what is inside the building. It may be a big fantastic museum or whatever. We have no idea, just have a reception table. That's it. So it's like that. Because human beings with this body, even if you go into the water, we cannot see what is inside the water. You need special equipment to see what is inside the water. So even on this earth, you cannot see with the eyes everything. You can't perceive everything with the eyes. So what to speak of other planetary systems like the moon, which is considered a higher planetary system. So even materially, we need higher senses of perception, even with respect to material object. Therefore, what to speak about the Bhagavatam? Bhagavatam requires a much higher level of perception. Therefore, these principles are scientific principles of cognition, of knowledge. They are not mere regulative principles of morality. They are principles of cognition, which means that when we practice this, our mind becomes pure. When our mind becomes pure, then Krishna, we begin to perceive Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam. So we should understand that the principles that we are following are not merely for the sake of following some morality. Then we may think, is there some other standard of morality? Maybe some other system of religion may present an easier system of morality. No, this is not just some relative form of morality. These are principles of cognition, cognitive principles. So therefore, to expand and to maintain the higher taste, one has to follow the rules and regulations. And so then one may wonder, what are the rules and regulations? So the rules and regulations for the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been given by our founder Acharya, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So the rules and regulations can be many, unlimited. So what is the specific formula? What is the specific package that we need to follow? That's very important. There was a young boy on Janmashtami day. He was fasting, even including from water, I guess. Yeah. Then in the evening, when it was time to go for the Abhishek, so I saw him and I said, "Oh, you're coming for the Abhishek?" He said, "No, I'm tired." So then I said, "Oh, maybe you went to the temple in the morning." He said, "No, I have not gone to the temple at all today." So where is this coming from? Is this Prabhupada's teaching? No. Prabhupada's teaching is, first of all, the Lord is the boss. On Janmashtami day of all days, you're supposed to go and report to him. And so the principle of fasting is meant to help us remember Krishna more. It is not meant to keep us away from Krishna. So there are so many rules and regulations. One can try to follow these rules and regulations with one's own ideas, with one's own speculations. That is not the prescribed method. The prescribed method is Mahajana Yena Gatasya Pantaha. So whatever our founder Acharya has set, those are the rules and regulations that one is supposed to follow. Which means that rising early in the morning is the first set of rules and regulations. And what do we do actually after rising early in the morning? We are not going through 1 hour of very difficult, strenuous yogic exercises. We are coming to sing and dance in a temple. So although it is regulative principles and things like that, it's a very easy thing to do. It may be a difficult thing to wake up, but it's a little bit of austerity. I remember one sannyasi, he was giving a class, who's no longer in ISKCON now. Anyway, when he was there, many years ago, I remember him hearing. It was a very humorous way he put it. So he said that we begin to think that our problems in life begin from the time the clock strikes for Mangalarati. And then he said, for some, the striking of the clock itself is a problem. So once the clock strikes, if we can somehow manage to go through that little bit of trouble to wake up, then what is it? What's next? Coming to the temple to sing and dance? What kind of regulation is that? It's a very simple thing to do. So like that, then we have a specific set of prayers, the samsara prayers. That samsara prayers were specifically chosen by Srila Prabhupada as ISKCON's Mangalarti prayers. This was not established by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur or the other Gaudiya Maths. This is not what they sing. And different Gaudiya Maths sing different things. But Srila Prabhupada specifically chose this prayer simply because he wanted to stress the fact that the success in Krishna conscious life depends on pleasing Srila Prabhupada and those who follow him properly. Because he said the reason that why he succeeded was because he followed his Guru Maharaj 100%. So therefore, he wanted that to be really strongly impressed in our minds, that the goal of all activities that we do is to please Srila Prabhupada. So then we have the Narasimha prayers, the Tulsi Arati, and even the daily Guru Puja. This, you don't have this in any of the Gaudiya Maths. They don't do daily Guru Puja of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. You have the daily Guru Puja of Srila Prabhupada, which is a very, very important and essential activity. It's not some optional activity. This is a mandatory activity for the followers of Srila Prabhupada. Once Srila Jayapatak Maharaj, my spiritual master, because when the Mayapur temple was being built, the long building was being built, so they had to work in shifts. So there were 24-hour shifts. Laborers would work 24 hours and different people devotees would supervise the shifts. So my spiritual master asked Srila Prabhupada this question, that sometimes I have to do, even whole night shifts. So then it's a challenge to come to Mangalarati. So Prabhupada said that if you're doing something, of course that's something which he wanted it to be done, 24-hour shifts, Prabhupada wanted it. So if you're doing something like that, then you need to come to the temple for Guru Puja. He said you cannot skip that. So these are all mandatory activities for the members of the Krishna consciousness movement. In fact, Bhagavatam also is mandatory. But in a community like Mayapur, where mothers have to cook and things like that, it's permissible for them, because otherwise they're not going to take care of the children, or what are the children going to eat, how are they going to go to school. So there is a certain amount of flexibility, but at least they could hear while cooking or whatever. But it is not, the understanding is, it is not an optional activity where I can do something else. If out of compulsion, out of necessity, no other way, if one has to do something else, that's a different thing. But it's not by choice. It's not that, okay, every day morning I get up in the morning at 4 o'clock and I go on Panchakrosh Parikrama of Mayapur. That's an acceptable practice. That's definitely an acceptable practice, but it's not a prescribed practice by Srila Prabhupada every day for us. So, if we wonder whether if our taste is not expanding and it's not sustaining, then first of all we need to re-examine, are we following the specific formula that our founder Acharya has given us? Are we following that formula? Most of the time the problem lies somewhere in that. It could be, or it could be because we are offensive towards devotees. Most often it is because we are not reading the books. Because we don't read the books, then we don't know why we are performing devotional service. And because we don't know why we are performing devotional, also we don't know how to perform it. So the root cause of all the problems, in fact, the root cause of all the problems according to our Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy is ignorance. It is not material desires like how the Bhaktisiddhanta, how the Buddhists say. So the root cause is avidya. So this Bhagavad Vidya is required to uproot that avidya. So our thinking, feeling, willing. Thinking has to be molded according to the books of Srila Prabhupada. Then our feeling and our actions will align. These three things have to be aligned. And if they have to be aligned, the core thing is to be absorbed in the books of Srila Prabhupada every day. There is no exception to that. It's not that, okay, one day I couldn't do what to do, it's so busy. No. There has to be a minimum that one has to fix, and one has to be directed through the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. Once Srila Gopal Krishna Maharaj is giving a class right here in the Panchatattva hall, where he gave a very nice example. He said, just like we may think, we have read the Bhagavatam, we have read the Bhagavad Gita, we know it. So, but he said, but it's important to read every day. He said, just why? Then he said, just like a knife. A knife is an instrument which is meant to cut. You may have a knife with you, he said, but if you don't sharpen it, it cannot cut. So we may have the knife of Bhagavad Gita, we may have the knife of Bhagavatam, we may have all this, we have studied, but it is necessary to sharpen the knife in order to be able to cut through illusion. So when we do that, then it's easy for us, easier, it becomes far, not easy, it becomes easy for us to know why we are doing what we are doing. Now why are we doing Mangalarati? Why are we doing, if we know it then we feel inclined to do it. So coming back to the point of absorption. So by absorption, one can see Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam. So we should understand that this is our fundamental principle, to be absorbed in what we are doing. So when we come to Mangalarati, what are we supposed to be thinking, or what are we supposed to be doing when we sing the samsara prayers? We're supposed to just be absorbed in the process. Not that we think, okay, what are the things for the tasks for the day? Or this is the next thing, this is the next thing, this is the next thing. We're not supposed to be thinking, what is the next? We're supposed to be thinking, what is now? That is called absorption. And in the third canto of Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada uses an expression called imperceptible liberation. Imperceptible liberation. Which means that, Jannivas Prabhu once explained this very nicely. He said that while doing deity worship, if one just does it with the idea that, okay, I've been asked to do this by my spiritual master, I've been asked to do this by Prabhupada, let me just absorb in doing it nicely. But instead of that, if we start thinking that I am not the body, I am the spirit soul, if you start thinking like this, you're not absorbed in what you're supposed to be doing. So that's why Prabhupada explains that Arjuna, while he was fighting, he was actually absorbed. Absorbed in what? This is the order of Krishna. I need to do this. He is absorbed in the order. So, absorption in the orders of Srila Prabhupada is the real solution to our problem with higher taste. If at all, I'm not saying for everybody in this room, those of us who may have a problem with higher taste, maintaining and expanding that higher taste, the solution is absorption. And as Vaisheshika Prabhu mentions often, that we can't try to attempt to do everything at one shot. So absorption can be incremental. If we try to become absorb everything that we do at one shot, may become overwhelming. So we can pick, okay, I am whatever I am. So let me try to absorb in one activity, two activity, whatever is possible, which we can surely do. We can surely do. Then when we pick up that absorption expands. From one absorption, it becomes the next absorption, then becomes the next absorption. Slowly, before we even realize, we are absorbed in every Krishna conscious activity that we do. So, that absorption is the key. So, until we come to the stage of full absorption, we have not awakened the spontaneous nature of Krishna consciousness. So it is going to be, because it is not spontaneous and because it's not immediate, unlike sense gratification, always spontaneous, immediately available, even if it's not immediately, not very difficult. But whereas in Krishna consciousness, we need to do some hard work. So let's begin that hard work. Because of the fact we already have a higher taste, let's absorb ourselves in at least one activity that we do. If it's chanting, if it's reading. Of course, I'm not saying that this is a license for not being absorbed in other activities. All that I'm saying is, at least however difficult it may be, let's try one activity in Krishna consciousness, which we can surely do. So even if it is chanting, at least one round, let me just do whatever it takes to chant that one round. I remember that I've been in Krishna consciousness for almost 3 decades now. But there's only one instance that I remember when I was just after high school, some 2 years after high school, when I remember that 16 rounds that I chanted, I really, put my heart and soul into it, fought my mind and did it. But even today, that is the only memory of absorption that remains in my mind. And I still wonder, how did I do it? Why can't I do it now? So somehow the other, and that really gave a huge taste in Krishna consciousness. So somehow or the other, if we can absorb ourselves in Krishna consciousness, incrementally, at least incrementally, then we'll see that our higher taste is constant, is expanding constantly, and is also becoming consistent. And it is not, as we see here in the purport, I want to speak this part for the last. As we see in the purport, Prabhupada is very strongly, and Brahma himself is explained how he situated himself in regulative principles, desiring self-interest for the welfare of all living entities. And Prabhupada also mentions this very strongly. He says that the highest life of moral principles, he says that he desired the welfare of all as servants of God, and anyone desiring the welfare of the members of his family and generations must conduct a moral, religious life. And Prabhupada concludes the purport. This is very important, because that's why he spoke a lot on higher taste, because I wanted to come to this point. Prabhupada says, the pure devotees of the Lord, like Brahma and persons in the chain of disciplic succession, do not do anything to instruct their subordinates without acting accordingly themselves. So we say, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. If we are not happy, the people who are going to hear this from us, they think, what is this? He's not happy. So how do I believe this? That chant Hare Krishna and be happy? So therefore, it is very important that for us to develop this higher taste, so that when we talk to people, they can be convinced of this philosophy. They can also be infected with that taste. Like, why did the disciples of Prabhupada take up to Krishna consciousness in such an enamored manner? They were just completely drawn towards Srila Prabhupada, because a pure devotee carries that bhakti shakti. It's one of the energies, the bhakti shakti. It's the most powerful energy, the bhakti shakti. Like when I was a student of physics, we used to study about laboratories where you can't enter strong laboratories. We have strong magnetic fields with some metal in your finger, like I have a ring. So you can't enter with this ring, because the fields are so powerful that the entire finger may get ripped off in that. So it's such a strong magnetic field. So like that, in fact, most tangible, like we think that the gross objects are tangible, right? Are strong, but actually it is said that the mind and intelligence are stronger than the gross objects. But similarly, the spirit soul is the strongest. So the bhakti shakti emanated by the spirit soul is the strongest force in the universe. It's most stronger than the force of gravitation, actually. It's most stronger than magnetic forces. So Prabhupada, because he was carrying the bhakti shakti, anyone who came in touch with him became affected by that bhakti shakti. Just like you go to that magnetic field, your finger will get ripped off. So like that, we have to become those metals, so that we can just get ripped off. Our material desires can get ripped off. So that's what happened when the disciples of Prabhupada came in touch with him, because he was carrying that bhakti shakti. So if we carry bhakti shakti, then we'll be able to convince others about taking up to this process of Krishna consciousness. And the best way of carrying that bhakti shakti is to carry a book of Prabhupada and give it out. We should be constantly thinking of how to distribute this bhakti shakti. Prabhupada's purports, his personal ecstasies are there in the book. It's not ordinary. That's why Prabhupada said, even if they don't read, even if they just touch the book, still they'll be benefited. So we should be conscious of this fact that as Vaisheshika Prabhu mentions, our family business is to distribute the books. And we are not, private individuals. We are part of a mission, actually. We are part of a mission. This is a missionary movement, which means we have a mission. And the mission is to bring everybody, make the whole world Krishna conscious. Vasudeva Kutumbakam, Prabhupada would say. Make the whole world the family of Krishna. They already are, but they've forgotten it. So if we need to do that, then we need to be conscious that, and when we are conscious of that, it actually works both ways. Like when we have taste, it affects others. When we try to give Krishna consciousness to others, we develop taste. So it reinforces each other. So when we develop some taste, we should try to give it out to others. When we give out Krishna consciousness to others, we develop more taste. So it's like it reinforces each other. So these two elements are intrinsically linked to each other. If we have to lead a healthy life in Krishna consciousness, if we have to lead a life at all, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would say, that those who are living, they preach. It's inevitable for them. The preaching is a symptom of life. So these two elements, both practice and preaching, are intrinsically separated are intrinsically related, not separated, for all followers of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And if we do that, then it is guaranteed that we will steadily progress and attain love of God. So I just wanted to speak a little bit on this in regard to this verse. So if there are any questions, comments, corrections. Yes, ma'am. Sridevi Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu, for such a heartfelt class, encouraging us to get absorbed. The point you made is very well received about getting absorbed. We tend to get overwhelmed when we try to get absorbed in too many things. And personally, services that I like to do, it's easy to get absorbed. And services that I don't really care for, it's very difficult to summon up the enthusiasm or the absorption. But everything is devotional service. So how can I, at least personally, change this attitude which is not very helpful for spiritually expanding the absorption?
Yeah. So the first thing is to be conscious of it. You're already conscious of it. That itself is a very big thing, that you're conscious of this fact. Again, the solution to all things, again, absorption. As I said, yes, you're aware of the fact that you're resenting something. Okay, this is not but so look for something which you are actually which you can absorb yourself in. For example, let's say chanting or reading or association of devotees, hearing Bhagavatam class, something which Prabhupada is prescribed. So when you develop that absorption cannot be contained, it expands. So slowly you will see that even the thing which you found difficult to absorb, and because of the fact that you're developing absorption in other areas, suddenly you begin to realize that this is service to Krishna, so let me become absorbed. So that absorption expands and engulfs everything else. So then slowly we begin to get absorbed in the whole process. But otherwise it can be self-defeating, as Kadambakanan Maharaj would say, that if we start thinking we are short here, we are short there, we are short, we need to do, then it can become a little bit depressing. Instead of that, Kadambakanan Maharaj prescribes that instead of thinking like that, let me take shelter of Krishna. Because that's our process. Because our process is not to become detached from the body, not to analyze, all that is there, but that Krishna provides. So when we become absorbed, then Krishna will tell us, look, you are not very enthusiastic about this service. Then we begin Krishna provides that knowledge. Look, you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right. But the solution to all of it is take shelter. Okay, there's nothing to get depressed. Okay, I'm not doing it right, fine, I will be able to do it right. Let me take shelter of Krishna for now, and it will happen. Yes, please.
Hare Krishna. Wonderful class, Prabhu. One thing that I've noticed, which is it very much aligns with the point that you're making, that when Prabhupada was present, one time he was asked, what if someone doesn't attend Mangal Artik? And he says, well, let them starve. And so there were temples like the Atlanta temple and the Boston temple. They used to lock the door to the temple room at the blowing of the conch shell. And someone wasn't there, they couldn't have breakfast. So, but over the years, and also in Mayapur, I've noticed quite a decrease in the numbers of devotees that actively participate in the standard sadhana practices that Prabhupada recommended. So, what to do about that? Because it's not healthy for our movement. You know, it's kind of like a, and it's not just Mayapur, but other places in the world as well. You know, there's been a gradual decline in this commitment, and you know there was one more point before I keep my big mouth shut. That Gopal Krishna Maharaj, this is before the Bhaktivedanta database was made public. It was a DAS version. Okay, and he did research and he noticed in all these letters that Srila Prabhupada sent to the GBCs and leaders, I guess it was to the GBCs, that your most important responsibility is to ensure that everyone goes to the morning program. And so it's just a super high priority. And when devotees do it, then they're happy. If they don't do it, then they're not happy. It's just kind of, they follow. And then it just sets the stage. How does someone stay active in Krishna consciousness for many years? He has to do these things. And we look at the history, I'm still talking, we look at the history of different devotees that haven't made it, you know, that have fallen down, and you examine the trajectory of their devotional practices, and they neglected these most important activities of the morning program.
Thank you for bringing this up. I think the endeavor that you're doing of, like you started with Janmashtami, we started with this Vyasa Puja, of trying to make devotees understand the significance of Prabhupada in their lives. That's going to make a big difference, because those who have a sense of relationship with Prabhupada cannot not follow what he's saying. You know, I think that's a very important thing, that devotees need to have that sense of relationship with Prabhupada, because if you have a relationship with him, how can you not follow? You know, if he's just a founder acharya, okay, he's somebody, I'm following my different people, you know, okay, with this friend or this senior devotee. But the moment you develop a relationship with Prabhupada, then you can't help but follow what he's saying. So I think you're doing a very important step in that direction. And the other thing is that as Prabhupada writes in the end of this purport, if the leaders do it, others will do it. So I think that if there is an emphasis in the leadership that this should be mandatory for all leaders of our movement, then I guess that culture will also permeate. So two things: one is to make devotees develop a relationship with Prabhupada; the other is for the leaders themselves to set the example.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful class. Prabhu, this may be a rumor or I heard somewhere. Instead of Samsara Dava, they sing Vibhavari Shesha. Like, so is it like... what?
No. Okay, I know what you're talking about. This is Vrindavan. But Vrindavan, they do sing Samsara Dava. After Samsara Dava, they sing Vibhavari Shesha. Yeah, they sing. I mean, it is not in front of the deities though, but they sing in front of Prabhupada Samadhi. But they do sing, first starts with Samsara Dava, then Vibhavari Shesha. I don't know how the practice started though, but they do sing Samsara Dava.
Hare Krishna. Puji, in the beginning you explained about like when we come to Krishna consciousness, for the mind it's like everything new, so we take it like a spontaneous. Yeah. So how like the rules and regulations would help also, like on the long way?
How the rules and regulations will
help like the spontaneous kind of attraction?
Oh, because it is not that, I mean, how do you say, as I was explaining, the rules and regulations are there for a purpose, which is that, which is to make, as Prabhupada explains, that if one is pure in action, then one is pure in, if one follows the four regulative principles, one is pure in action. If one is pure in action, then one becomes pure in mind. One becomes pure in mind, then one is able to absorb oneself in hearing Bhagavatam, and then one can see Krishna in every page. So the goal is to come to that absorption. But we know that we are not fully absorbed. That's why we are not able to see when we attend. I'm not saying everybody. Maybe there are some devotees who are able to see. But generally, it's not that we are seeing Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam, right? That means we are not absorbed, right? So, which means that we are not pure in our habits of eating, sleeping, mating, defending. And when we say eating, sleeping, mating, defending, it's a very big thing. It's not just some, I just eat Krishna Prasadam, that's all, I'm eating properly. No, that's not enough. Eating means, when we have Prasadam, we should be conscious of the fact this is Mahaprasadam, Sharira, Vidya, Jal. As I was explaining in an earlier class, it's not that, Prasadam is bona fide, so let me look at all the restaurants in Mayapur, which is offering good food, which is offering, this is not so good, that is so good. But this is not the point. The point is Prasadam is the mercy of the Lord. So like that, because all spiritual experiences have a sensual component, they have as long as we are in this body, all spiritual experiences also have a sensual component, emotional component, and intellectual component. So if we get absorbed in the sensual component alone, then we're forgetting the spiritual experience. It is bona fide. I'm not saying it's not bona fide, because still prasadam. But it's not. That's not the point. The point is that's why we invoke the samsara prayers, right? So that we are conscious that this is the mercy of the Lord. Because we are not absorbed, we get caught up in the sensual component alone, and we just get carried away by duality. This is good, that is bad, and all that, So we need to get, again, coming back to the point of absorption. And because we are not able to be absorbed, because we are not pure, so let us start somewhere. Let us start somewhere. So we try as much as possible. And as I was saying, the moment we get absorbed in one thing, slowly that expands to the next. Slowly we become, over time, we become absorbed in everything that we do. So it has to start somewhere, that absorption.
One thing that I've discovered in my attempts to become absorbed is that the number one formula that I found is that if I chant really good rounds, then that absorption follows me through the day, and I, can experience Krishna's presence in my life, throughout the day if I'm really serious about my japa.
Yeah, this is a good point. The reason I said absorbed in any activity is simply because some devotees find japa itself to be difficult. So if that is the case, then of course attentive japa, there's nothing like attentive japa with, you can just carry not just for one day, you can carry for 2 days, many days. There's nothing like it. But if one is not able to do that, at least some Krishna conscious service that one is doing, one can at least start getting absorbed in that. Whatever one can be absorbed in, which is purely Krishna seva, it's a good starting point. Okay, so thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande.